What up, Ram Nation? We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams live from the Toyota Lounge. We're talking about Tory Horton being out for the season, how CSU's offense must respond. We're setting the scene for Air Force, the Rams looking for their first win in the spring since 2002. We're talking keys to victory, Mountain West power rankings, and more. Live. I am Justin Michael. We have got Andre, the man, the myth, the legend, Simone here. We're live from the Toyota Lounge. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR.
You know it.
How you doing, man? We've got a lot of football these next couple of days.
Broncos tonight. We haven't talked since the Oregon State game.
I guess, and yeah, that's true.
We got to do a round table before the San Jose game, which was fun. 2 incredible games. I'm hyped, man. I mean, it's the exciting time of year, and all the teams are still in it. So, can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, offense going the right direction. It feels like with CSU. Although we'll see if they can maintain it without Tory Horton. We're going to focus on that here in the intro. With the Broncos being tonight though, and CSU going to the Springs, I got the BVP jersey on. They haven't won in the Springs since BVP was the quarterback, so it felt kind of fitting. CSU's only won in Colorado Springs 3 times in my life, and 2 of them were my first 2 years of existence. The last one I was 7 years old. It's been a long time. So
that's crazy.
While this program may be struggling, they're definitely one of the worst teams in the Mountain West this year. A win over Air Force would certainly go a long way. It's something that just has not happened a lot over the last 20 years, but especially so on the road. We're going to talk about all that. We'll talk about some of the names to know, some of the keys for this CSU offense. But we got a lead here with Tory Horton, who we found out is going to be out for the season. Brutal timing. They had just kind of gotten him back into the flow of things there. Had a really good game against Oregon State. Was having a great game against San Jose State before he went down. Finishes just 35 yards shy of breaking the all-time receiving yards record for the Mountain West, which is really cruel because he was a guy that was incredible loyal, has had a multitude of opportunities to jump to bigger conferences over the last 3 seasons, stuck by Jay Norvell, stuck by CSU, and undoubtedly one of the most talented receivers to ever suit up for CSU. But what was, I guess, your instant reaction to this happening? Because it was obviously a gut punch.
Yeah, it's a huge bummer. I think having Horton back the last 2 weeks, you really saw what kind of impact that has on the offense. I think really 2 of the best performances we've seen in the Norvell era. I mean, between taking Oregon State to the brink and then taking it home against San Jose State, he's just such a key. He's really the straw that stirs the drink in a lot of ways. Even with this being more of a run-heavy, switch of an offensive identity a bit, having Horton at just his... In basketball, we talk a lot with shooting and the Golden State Warriors about gravity. Tory Horton carried a lot of gravity in this offense. That gravity opens up all sorts of other spacing for everyone else. Now you don't have that.
Yeah, I mean, it changes everything. I like the basketball comparison because you see it with Jokic on the Nuggets, obviously. Like when he's out there, the entire spacing changes. It creates more space for everybody else on the floor because he commands so much attention. You want to look at other examples like Steph Curry on the perimeter. Similar deal. When Tory's out there, not only do you have your number 1 corner locked on him, but a lot of the times he's probably getting shadowed by his safety. I mean, he opens up everything else for the rest of the receiving core. And, we've seen some of these other guys of late, whether it was Caleb Goody late against Oregon State or Armani Winfield with a breakout performance last week. Vince Brown, the tight end, he had his best game as well. When you get Tory in the mix, all of a sudden it just feels like it kind of opens up space. The caveat, obviously, with Winfield is that he really broke out in that second half once Tory went down, which was an encouraging sign in a tough time. I think that's where we kind of take this here.
A lot of the breakout comes down to one play.
Well, I mean, that's where a lot of the yardage comes from, but I don't necessarily agree with that because his very first snap, he didn't really play very much until they got him on the field. Tory goes down late in the second quarter. They immediately go quick screen to him. It goes for 9. Then early on in the third quarter, they went to him on third down twice, converted on both of those. I thought that was highly encouraging. One was like a deep comeback. One was an out route. Both are tough throws too. So like an encouraging sign from the passing offense, operating as you would hope that it should. And that has not happened a ton this year, but it feels like they're kind of getting it together. We'll talk about that. But, I mean, Winfield has got to build off of it, obviously. I mean, yes, the highlight play was certainly the biggest moment of the day. You feel a lot better because he makes that play than if it would have just been a handful of conversions on third down. But I do feel like you start to see the chemistry growing between them. I mean, they went to him pretty often in the second half of that UTEP game, had the big touchdown. He's starting to put it together a little bit.
I mean, the flashes of brilliance are easy to see. And, I mean, that touchdowns, that's on 3rd and 8, short of the sticks. He does the rest, I mean, that's a monumental play, broke the game open. You're going to need him, though. I mean, your guy on third down was Tory Horton before this, and now you're not going to have it, so Winfield is going to have to step up in that sense,
He's a former 4-star recruit, so he obviously has some pedigree. Athletically, you can see, much like Tory Horton, he just kind of moves differently than the rest of these guys out there. You've got some really intriguing young speed as well. So that's kind of what this really comes down to for me, is who else out wide is able to step up and make some plays. You saw Winfield really step up against San Jose State, which was highly encouraging. But now you need some of these other guys who have flashed in moments but have not put it together consistently, whether that's Caleb Goody, whether that's Jordan Ross, Jamari Person, all these first and second year players who have a lot of talent, who have got a lot of ability. Can they now in the second half of the season take advantage of some more opportunities? Jacob in the Toyota chat wants to know why has Goffney been MIA this year? He's hurt. I don't expect to see him for the rest of the season. I think he's likely going to redshirt. I don't know if we're going to see him in a CSU uniform again, though, to be honest. I mean, we'll see. I guess he might keep that year and use it with the Rams. He might use it elsewhere. You never know in the modern era of college football, but there have been a couple of veterans this year who I thought we would see more of that have not really stepped up, him being one of them, albeit battling injuries. Thought we'd see more Donovan Ollie. Maybe we see more of him down the stretch here now that you have some opportunities. He also had some injuries early on in the year. But I think it really comes down to Armani Winfield and the young guys who we've seen produce to this point, because you have other guys and you can talk yourself into Ollie looked great in the spring. He's got a ton of experience, but we haven't seen him on the field doing anything at any point this year. We have seen Winfield make plays. We have seen Goody. You need those two guys to be your top 2 targets, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that Jamari Parsons is the only receiver in last week's game to have a reception not named Amari Winfield or Tory Horton.
Or Vince Brown, but he's a tight end, obviously.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's another guy, though, that I think they got to lean on. And I think what was really encouraging about the offense in particular against San Jose State was, they've really leaned on this physical identity. They've run the football with more consistency, been not a hybrid or not a West Coast offense by textbook definition, but kind of like a hybrid West Coast offense. They still have some air raid principles in the passing game, but you saw them start to break out more of those West Coast principles this past week. You had success on play action right off the get-go. I love that. You finally introduced some of those naked bootlegs, and Braden, he made some really good decisions scrambling with the football, which is something we've wanted to see more of from him, and something you and I have advocated for, because he's a good athlete, and honestly, he's faster than I thought. I didn't think he was going to score on that play.
He's a phenomenal athlete. He just doesn't really tuck it and run all that much, so I was really glad to see that decision. And I think, as you've mentioned, the defenses are only going to get easier from here on. They're only going to get less talented. His athleticism on those scrambles is only going to stand out more from now until we get to Fresno, at least.
Yeah.
So that's promising, and that's one way to counter, really my biggest criticism, my main criticism of BFN is his throws on the run. He's such a phenomenal athlete. He's so good squeezing it into tight windows when he's dead to rights that sometimes in those on the boots, on the move, he lets you down with some throws that are not as accurate as he can be at his best. So it's nice to see him switch it up, make some other decisions too,
Well, I mean, when they're giving you that type of space, you got to take it. I think there have been spots in the past where maybe you have some turnovers. You can see what he's thinking, trying to force a ball tight on the sidelines. But if they're going to give you 8-9 yards, just take it, especially when you're running the ball as effectively with Avery Morrow as you are. I mean, if you're setting yourself up on 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 consistently, you're going to be in a pretty good spot with the way you're running the ball, with the traction you're gaining in the trenches right now. The offensive line really doing well in those run scenarios.
No kidding.
And now, you're starting to, they're really leaning in. They focus in on Morrow. Boom, all of a sudden you run a little naked bootleg and you've got 25 yards of open space to work with. I would have liked to have seen that little fake pitch naked play and double overtime against Oregon State instead of trying to kind of pound the ball down their throat when they're basically putting 10 in the box and daring you to do anything else. It was nice to see them build off of it because the run game is great, but you still have to be able to create off of it. And this is how you create more explosive plays over the top. This is how you keep them off balance. This is how you limit turnovers. And this is how you take some pressure off of your quarterback, especially now that you don't have Horton out there. Like, we're just going to create some plays where you're going to roll out and maybe you dump it off to Vince Brown in the flat. Maybe you just take off for 8 yards, though.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's attacking the football field in vertical ways. Run it up the gut, then that's going to open up other things, just like the vertical passing game might open it up. And it's no surprise that then Winfield, that big touchdown, comes on crossers. That's kind of the Jay Norvell staple. They're just getting to it in other ways.
And I love that. Like, I love that they're incorporating some of those principles that you had so much success on that Braden is going to do well with because he's done it before. It's familiar to him.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of this offense was not familiar to him. This wasn't like a decision they made in the spring. Hey, we're going to run the football more. This was a decision they basically made like a week and a half before the Texas game, completely changed offensive identities. And you can argue about whether, they should have done that sooner if that was going to be the plan, but they've stuck to it. I think it would have been bad if they tried to do this for a couple weeks and then completely abandoned it. And then the passing offense would have been all out of sorts as well. They're starting to have some success. They've been stubborn with it. You're starting to see the benefit of running the football more. But what's encouraging is they're finally starting to have some real balance and not just like from a 50-50 standpoint. I mean, from being able to execute the element of the offense when you need to. They were great on third down last week. They ran the ball with a ton of success. But on those 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9s, when they had to throw the ball, Braden did a really great job of spreading the ball out to different guys, using the entire field. He made some really hard throws that, a lot of guys just don't have the arm strength to get it across at that point. A lot of that was encouraging. My big question is just, can you maintain it now that your number one guy is out there? Because as we've already talked about, Tory just completely changes everything.
100%. I mean, Braden has some just fantastic throws in his arsenal.
His high moments are really high, and that's like draft guys. Obviously, we're constantly thinking about it from a what's your ceiling standpoint, and there have obviously been some games where he's really struggled. Wyoming last year, Utah State. The decision making as a whole has been more consistently better this year. Haven't had quite as many big plays passing, but I think a lot of that has to do with the stylistic change. It took him a while to get used to being under center this much. Yep. I think Horton being in and out of the lineup for the first couple of weeks has been a big factor as well. Now, it's obviously brutal to lose Horton, but there is, from a game plan standpoint, it's nicer being able to know exactly who's going to be out there. Because I think that was part of the problem with the CU game plan too, is they didn't really know if he was going to play or not. And then he did play, but he obviously was not effective. At this point, you really lean into this offensive identity of running the ball, and you try really hard to get some of these other receivers to break out. And, as you mentioned, the at least statistically, the 6 defenses that they're going to play from here on out are worse than what you've seen to begin the season 5 out of the 6 rank 109th or lower in stop rate. That's just percentage of your drives that ends in punt, turnovers, or turnover on downs. The highest that they play from here is Fresno State at 64th, and even San Jose State's like 56th, and you ran the ball really effectively against them. You stayed on the field. All of that is encouraging. Can you maintain it? And that's, I think, a question mark at best right now, because we haven't seen this group without Horton have any type of consistent success this year.
No, for sure. And I think it'd be hard to argue that the passing game and the receivers available, it feels like it's a downgrade to what the offense had last year.
Yeah, top to bottom. Lewis Brown, especially, not having him in this moment is tough. He's a guy that you can hit all over the field. Justice Ross Simmons was more of a vertical threat, big play type guy. But losing LB as, a guy between the sticks, especially, has been tough. And you felt that. And you felt a lack of chemistry, I think, between BFN and some of these other receivers. You're starting to see it pop a little bit with Winfield, which is encouraging. Yeah. But you need more of it.
Holker too, man. I just think you don't have the same kind of threat up the seam over the middle that you had a season ago. But this offensive style, this Avery Morrow as your bell cow, this run blocking, and this offensive line, it might be a more reliable offense than you ever had last year. Right?
Well, and I think
the peaks might have been higher a year ago.
Yeah.
But this offense has more reliability, more sustainability, more consistency. And I think this offense is going to be able to travel easier. I think this offense is going to be able to match up against your rivals, Air Force, Wyoming, right?
And I think a lot of that went into the logic from this staff. And Norvell's kind of talked about that of, look, guys, it may not be as sexy, it may not be as flashy, but this style of football will win in this league. And they had some lumps early on. If you would have been able to pull out that win against Oregon State, it would have validated it a lot more. But, you're going into a very favorable portion of your schedule here. If you keep running the ball the way you are and you can build off of it and have the success with play action, limit your turnovers, that was still the big bugaboo. I mean, you don't fumble the ball late before the second, late in the second quarter, right before halftime. You don't have that late interception. This is a 21-plus point win. I mean, CSU dominated that game.
Yeah, and a defense that held the offense to 17 points, right?
Yeah, one of 2 teams this year to hold them to 17 offensive points. Only team this year to hold them to 1 passing touchdown. All of that was highly encouraging, but now you've got a completely different style of matchup coming up, and we're going to set the scene for that. Guys, life is, it can be long. It can be complicated and stressful. I'm about to move again, which is a pain in my butt. But as we've talked about a lot on this show, it's all about how you deal with it. It's about the mindset you choose, frankly, and how you respond to adversity. I'm sounding like a football coach right now, but there's some logic in that, man. When life gets tough, it's all about choosing a chill mindset. It's all about putting yourself in that right state of mind. Mow the lawn, get some exercise. I don't know, go to a rage room or something like that. Then when you're done, kick back, crack open an ice-cold Coors Light, cold and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for that smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Dre, do you know what time it is right now?
Football?
It's game time.
Heck yeah.
And, nobody has more great deals on football tickets than our friends at Game Time, especially with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It's easier than ever to get tickets for your favorite sporting events, comedy, stand-up theater, you name it, or stand-up comedy, theater, you know what I mean. You name it, they've got it. They have got tickets to everything. And they have so many tickets, actually. That's why they have introduced this Game Time Picks. It's just a nice little curation feature, so you don't have to scroll through thousands and thousands of tickets. Going to show you the best of the best. That's what Game Time is all about, making it more convenient to be a consumer, making it easier than ever to enjoy your favorite live events.
Amazing deals on this Air Force game.
I'm not surprised. It's supposed to be raining sideways and freezing now because it's just inevitable. I don't think CSU's had a nice weather game in the spring since 2014. But hey, opportunity to witness history. CSU's not won there since 2002. Big time matchup. Try and make it Fort Collins South. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, that seems like a good place to take things. I mean, one of the benefits is being a more physical team, being a team that has a strong ground game that should travel in a situation like this where wind might be a factor, where rain might be a factor. Obviously, you still want to create through the passing game. I don't think it can be completely one-sided, but you have an opportunity here to kind of dictate the tone and dictate the style of play against an Air Force team that's struggling on both sides of the ball in a way that we just really have not seen very frequently from them. I think this is probably the worst they've looked since 2013 when they went 2-10. I mean, a lack of continuity, I think, just kind of finally caught up to them. That was something we talked about in the preseason, was eventually losing your leading rusher like 4 times in 5 years has got to catch up, replacing your quarterback and all this. I think the biggest difference, though, is just they had to replace 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen. And you've seen that lack of continuity from an execution standpoint where they've had so much experience these last couple of years. They've been so polished executing this wonky offense. They look like a team that's in a state of rebuild.
Yeah, and I think also one of the few programs in Division I that just isn't able to benefit from the transfer portal.
That's a good
Transfer
point.
portal has raised all boats in most cases. I think it's made conference play much more competitive. But yeah, they're just not going to get that bump. They can't go to like the FCS and get those guys from a G5 or get those, lower level G5
Yeah, it's harder
guys
to fill the
come to
holes
them.
than for other teams. Like, you're not just going to, let's go pick up this running back real quick. Let's go pick up this offensive tackle who's on the move. It's all got to be homegrown. And that's what's made the sustained success under Calhoun in the last 5 years so impressive, is, being these double-digit win teams.
And building long term, like you need a guy who's been in the program for 3-4 years before you're actually getting something out of him. In a lot of cases, right? Like you're getting upperclassmen who are like redshirt juniors.
And I think you see that benefit, and obviously their style of play comes into the equation there, but like I think that makes sense to why they've had kind of a physical advantage and like they've been so refined. Well, you got grown-ass men out there and
yeah, for sure.
And military. So, it's like a different level of preparation. But they have just they've been rough this year. And, I've made it pretty clear on social media. We saw Mile High Minute say in the comment section, would a blowout be awesome? Yeah, that'd be great. But you haven't beat this team, period, since 2016. You haven't beat them in the spring since I was 7 years old, 2002, since before Britney Spears went crazy. We might have still had Justin Timberlake and NSYNC at that point. I'm not 100% sure on the timeline. They're 1-5 right now. They rank 130th out of 134 teams in points per game at 15.7, 28.5 points per game allowed, which is not awful considering the lack of offensive success. Those numbers are skewed a little bit, though, by their first 2 weeks where they only gave up 24 total points. They've given up 31 plus in 4 straight weeks. They did score a season high last week, 31 or 37 points, whatever it was, against New Mexico. But New Mexico might legitimately be the worst defense in the country. I don't know how much stock to really put into that. The toughest part from trying to prepare for them is I've watched a couple of different games this year. I think they've had a different guy under center for each of them. It looks like Quentin Hayes is going to start at quarterback. He's been getting the majority of the reps the last couple of weeks. He's had some success on the ground at 103 yards, 5.7 yards per carry last week. Had their passing touchdown against Navy. It's kind of a wonky spot because, like, not only do you have to prepare for this weird offense and all the wrinkles that it throw in, you don't really know exactly who you're going to be going up against.
Yeah, I mean, that does complicate things. I also, like, my biggest read on all those stats you just unleashed, they're allowing that many points. It's very atypical for an Air Force team, and it's because they're not able to shorten games. They're not able to sustain drives the way we've seen in years past.
Yeah, it's just too many 3 and outs. And that's when I talked about at the beginning, like, you might have an opportunity to, I guess, like, they typically dictate the tone, obviously. They dictate the tempo.
Yeah.
They make it so They shorten the game. You have to execute on offense because like if I go 3 and out here, not only is my defense gassed because they've been on the field, you might not get the ball back for 10 minutes of gameplay, not just like real time, but of gameplay. They haven't been able to do that this year. They're only averaging 3.8 yards per carry. It's the first time in a decade that they haven't been top 10 in the country in rushing.
Wow.
They're allowing 5 yards per carry too. So like not only are they not having the success offensively in the trenches, not only are they not able to sustain drives, but they're having a hard time getting off the field themselves. That's not a recipe for success. And if you're CSU, they were so good in early downs this past game. San Jose State's average third down distance was 9 yards. That's not a great spot to be in.
That's massive.
Especially if you're Air Force. And I think that was a big factor with why you saw the Rams get off the field so much more, why San Jose State only converted a third of their third down attempts. Was you were constantly putting them in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. You do that against Air Force, you're going to be in a really good spot. The caveat, obviously, is you just don't want to get burned in the back end, getting caught peeking, because they're always going to test your discipline. And even when they're bad, it still feels like they're good for like one 60-yard play action pass a game.
Yeah, and you wonder, like, if it is a rainy, ugly day, how much will those conditions play into the Falcons' hand? You know, is that going to make it more of a slop fest? Is that going to put CSU's offense more on a level playing field with the Falcons because all of a sudden you can't pass the ball around the park as much?
It could definitely be an equalizer because they're not as predicated on having success through the air.
Yeah.
I guess I would argue it depends on if you want to look at it cynically or not, because cynically that would be the way to approach it. And I would say that given the series history, cynical is probably a fair approach with this matchup. I would also argue that based on what I've seen over an extended period now, half a football season worth of play, CSU's better at running the football than Air Force is this year. They got a better line.
It's crazy.
They got a better back. They've got multiple better backs.
And better at stopping the run, dare I say.
They have been. And that's the bit. Can you do it consistently against Air Force?
It's a different animal.
You gotta stop the fullback dives, because if they have success in the middle, now all of a sudden you introduce all the variations to the outside. 2 of their touchdowns last week came on the same play, just kind of a quick pitch to the outside sweep. Your guys on the edge got caught looking inside, got on the outside, boom, gone. That's going to be a huge factor. Can you tackle with consistency? Can you set yourself up? And can you stay on the field offensively? Mm-hmm. And can you get off the field? Sometimes we try and make football rocket science, and it's really not that complicated of a game. Like, can you win in the trenches? How do you do on third down on both sides of the ball? And what happens in the red zone? Last week, you only gave up one red zone trip. You executed in the red zone. You do that, you're going to win pretty consistently when you're not turning the ball over and you're not committing stupid penalties.
It really comes down to some of the more basic fundamentals. And honestly, a nice little prep appetizer for the Wyoming game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This should be your precursor to all that.
Well, in some ways, too, like you've got New Mexico coming. They're not an option offense, but they've got a very mobile quarterback in Devin Dampier. They do run a lot of RPO type stuff. Same deal. They're going to test your discipline with counters and sweeps and, all kinds of motion and see, where are your eyes right now. I like that a lot of these teams, they have some similar tendencies. Nevada runs a lot with Brendan Lewis as well. You just played an Oregon State team who runs the ball a ton with McCoy. Got gashed a little bit late in that game with the quarterback runs, so that's discouraging in that regard. But you have kind of had a nice little tester, and even the San Jose State quarterbacks can run around a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the more exotic offenses have passed. Now it's more meat and potatoes, more basic, more fundamental. Take care of business, and you're going to be in a good spot.
Can you line up? Can you run the ball? Can you convert on third and short? Can you score touchdowns instead of field goals? That's a big factor against a team like Air Force. The longer you let them hang around, I think the more the nerves start to set in and the more the feelings of, oh man, we've been here before with this team. CSU's been relatively competitive in the springs over the last decade. They just find ways to lose the game, unfortunately. You won a game last week that I said on the post-game show felt like, 24 out of 25 times they lose that game over the last 10 years. You're now in a very similar type setting. can you go out and do it again? Because if you go and win this game, you're 2-0 in league, and you've got some really tricky games coming up. We're healthy respect for Nevada and New Mexico, but you should be favored in those games, I would think, or at least Nevada on the road, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about how rest of the road, they should be favored in every game but one.
And at this rate, we'll see with Fresno. They're 2-game losing streak. They're struggling. We'll talk about it more in power rankings.
Yeah.
As a Fresno fader, you might have bet your preseason trends of fading Fresno and being all in on Devin Dampier are both looking really good.
Amazing calls by me.
Ball knower.
That's right.
All right. We're going to get to Mountain West power rankings here in just a second, but I do want to talk to you guys about something important. And do you guys know that Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now? A lot of you are. If you're one of them, go check out Premier Members Credit Union. They're a financial institution based right here in Colorado. With PMCU, you get local branches, friendly tellers, and the tools you need to save smarter, like a reverse tier money market. It's an organization that serves the community and the Colorado community in particular. It's the account you need to get ahead and stay ahead in this economy, which is huge. Whatever your goals, they can help. Why not see what they can do for you? Check out becomepremier.com to find out more. I also want to talk to you guys about an awesome initiative from our friends over at UC Health, Ready, Set, Co. UC Health wants you to prioritize your healthiest selves by getting optimal sleep, guys. It's really easy, especially when you've got a lot going on, to get in a rut, to not make the right habits on a daily basis, to not get enough rest. And you're going to feel it. I know that when I'm lagging, I don't feel as creative. I don't feel like I function as well. I'm not as smooth on the mic. I'm not as good of a writer. I'm certainly not as fun to be around. When you get that 8 hours, you just feel it in so many different ways. And that's really what we want to emphasize here is don't sleep on sleep. 8 hours is that magic number. Put your phone down when you go to bed too. That's one that's tough in our line of work. But I've been trying to put the phone on do not disturb after 9:30.
Yep. Great call.
It's not good. When you sit there, your brain's restless, you're scrolling. It's just not a healthy way to go to sleep. If you want to join UC Health's Ready, Set, Co challenge, click the link in the show notes or go to www.uchealth.org/readysetco.
Nice.
If you're looking for a place to watch the game this Saturday, come through the DNVR bar. We are having a CSU Air Force watch party. It'll be a lot of fun. $4 house shots throughout.
Beautiful.
It's going to be a grand old time. Come get a burger. Come get some fries. Just, enjoy some time with your people. There's no better place than watching the game at the DNVR bar. If you're looking for a place to watch the Broncos tonight, come down. Doors open at 3 p.m., I believe. Happy hour from 4 to 6. It's going to be a blast. Big one. As I wrote in the newsletter, big one for this team. This is where you want the coach you traded for to make a difference going into his old city. If you don't get the newsletter, sign up, become a DNVR member. You're going to get access to all my written content. The vast majority of that is going to be for DNVR members only. So if you're looking for access to some of the best local sports coverage around, sign up, become a DNVR diehard. You get discounts at the bar.
Damn straight.
Get a free shirt of your choice every year that alone basically is worth it. Just to get the annual t-shirt and all the access.
Great deal, yes.
Anyway, sorry, kind of rambled there, but I wanted to shout some stuff out before we got into our power rankings here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do these live in the moment. Would you agree that Air Force is the bottom dweller at the moment?
Hard to argue against it, but boy, you have some strong candidates, especially Utah State.
When you look at this schedule that CSU has for the remainder, and you look at Air Force 1-5, Utah State 1-5, Wyoming 1-5, New Mexico 2-4. I mean, the best team you play is Fresno, and they're sitting at 500, rocking a 2-game losing streak.
Honestly, it's kind of surprising Nevada's been as good as they've been.
You
thought they'd be closer to the 1-5 squads than here sitting 3-4.
Just pulled off a major win over Oregon State at home, but yeah, I think Jeff Choate should be in the running for Coach of the Year. Just that turnaround, the success they've had in year one is quite impressive.
Yeah, it really is.
We'll get to more of some of these comments about this weekend and the final thoughts as well. So keep them rolling in. I appreciate everybody. I'll get to this question about Newer. We'll talk about the three-headed beast, all that stuff. I've got Utah State at 11, Wyoming at 10. I think you could argue really any combination of those three teams, but I think there's a clear-cut bottom third of the conference right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I'm slightly surprised Wyoming is this bad, but all the changes that occurred this offseason, I probably shouldn't be.
Replacing a coach like Bull is tough, man. I mean, he's just a guy that did something that historically had not happened a ton, at least in the 21st century.
Truly. And I just thought the drop-off would come more in year 2 and not instantly.
I did too, because they returned 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. They had more continuity in their defensive front 7 than anybody other than Boise State.
Yeah.
They've had a ton of injuries. They've been really bitten by the injury bug in their defense. But man, they're struggling. They don't have an offensive identity. Svoboda has looked really rough. And not having Harrison Whaley for most of the season, to be fair, has been a big factor. He's when healthy, a top 2 or 3 back in the league.
Certainly.
If I had to put a knife to your back and say who finishes with the most wins between Wyoming and Air Force, who you going with?
I'd go Wyoming. I think they start to figure a couple things out.
They've been more competitive the last couple weeks.
Just as the Rams' easier stretch is coming,
it's a good point.
Theirs will too.
It's a good point.
I mean, it's not a great year of Mountain West football.
You've got 2 really good teams at the top, Boise and UNLV. You've got a couple of wild cards in the middle, and you've got a whole lot of slop. But honestly, that makes sense when you have, like half the league as a first-year coach, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, you called it. You called it for sure.
Number 9, we're going Hawaii, 2-4.
They've had a tough schedule.
They've had a brutal. They've probably had the hardest schedule in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you it's like top 20 toughest in the country.
I am interested to see if they can tighten some things up defensively. They've got to find a way to steal one on the road every now and then. Like they're gonna be a team who, if they make a bowl, they're probably a 4 or 5 win team at home every year. That's just their recipe for success. Mm-hmm. They haven't been able to steal anything on the road, and that's what's held them back, really, because they've been frisky for 2 years now.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, also some of these home games have been pretty tough opponents.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So that doesn't help.
It wouldn't
either.
shock me if they really started ripping, a couple of 30, 40-point games here down the stretch as we get into conference play.
I'll be interested to see if their offense can pick it up a bit.
It's definitely, it had much, you could argue, like CSU, they have not hit the ground running offensively after flashing quite a bit of explosiveness this past year.
Yep, it's actually a great comp. But unlike CSU, they're not going to a stylistic change.
And that's what's interesting. Like all their receivers are the same. Their quarterback's the same. Their running back's back. I'm surprised it hasn't clicked more than it has. But maybe it's just the schedule. And again,
pretty highly
touted
tough. Offensive mind running the show. Yeah,
also true. We got New Mexico at 8, which I struggle with. I think you could put them as low as 10. I think you could put them as high as 6.
Yeah.
Offensively, they are potent. They are really dangerous with Devin Dampier.
For sure.
They are as bad defensively as anybody in the country, though. And that's why it's one of those, they're going to get somebody late here, and you just hope it's not CSU, who obviously has not lost to New Mexico since 2009. They're going to beat a team, though, that's like significantly above 500, and they're also probably going to lose to a 1 or 2 win team because they just are such a mess defensively.
How far off do you think they really are from San Jose State?
Not that far.
Is it a tier difference? I always think of these in terms of tiers.
San Jose, they're about 1 tier away. San Jose State, you trust them more defensively to hang in the game.
Yeah, and they just have more depth offensively.
Yeah, they turn the ball over a little less too.
It's the Dampier show, and
they're fun to watch. He's must watch TV.
He sure is,
and he's gonna make Luke Wysong an all conference receiver, which is saying something.
Especially in this year.
I know there's a lot of talent.
Reynolds, Nash, Horton's gonna be out, but Winfield's gonna have a good case. I mean, the conference has some really high end receivers.
A lot of receivers, decent depth at running back too, and Avery Morrow is, I think, quickly played his way into that combo for running back 2. Nobody's gonna top Gianti, obviously, but.
I mean,
especially with Whaley out, like Sherrod hasn't done much for Fresno.
Yeah.
3 straight 100-yard games for Avery. That's all I'm
what
saying.
Avery's doing is incredible.
He's got the burst back.
He is kicking ass, man.
His vision, he doesn't miss holes. Like, that's the thing about these other guys. They're explosive. I think all the other backs are a little bit more explosive, but Avery does look good. He's got the burst back, but it's his vision. It's the ability to cut back, that ability to, this is supposed to be a stretch, but there's a little sliver here. I'm going for it. I can't say enough about him because he's, frankly, might save their season by the time it's all said and done. I got San Diego State at 7. I think you could, again, they're much like a lot of these teams. You could argue 5 through 8. They're starting to put it together, though.
Yeah.
And coming off of a nice win in Laramie, starting to put it together. Now, Sean Lewis may be a sleeping giant out there if they can build an offense.
Yeah, I mean, he actually might diversify that offense. That's been their problem over the last couple of years. But don't look now, 2-0 in conference. It's
a lot like CSU. You can control your own fate from here.
To figure some things out.
They do have a tough schedule going on, but that's the top half.
Do you believe in the quarterback though?
Not really, not this year. But I mean, they're playing a true freshman, so
right. I think that's the only difference between them and the Rams.
Agreed. Yeah.
But right now it's easy to overlook them, and I'm overlooking the hell out of them. I'm saying this as someone who is, in fact, doing what I'm warning against. But yeah, Sean Lewis, young quarterback, figure some things out. Don't be surprised if, 1 or 2 games you thought they were going to be on the wrong side of all of a sudden they come up with the dub,
I'm with you. They're coming together at the right time. Take a breather real quick right here, and then we'll do this top half. We'll rush through it real quick since we don't have the graphic like usual. Air Force at 12, Utah State 11, Wyoming 10, Hawaii 9, New Mexico 8, San Diego State 7. Let's get into the top half now. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up in the Toyota chat, I'd appreciate it. Shout out to all of you. Shout out to our man Riley.
Legends.
We got a Ram producing the show today, which you love to see it. The green and gold vibes. We're getting more Rams involved, and slowly but surely we're integrating here.
That's what we needed. I love it.
Yeah, we needed more of the presence of green and gold for sure. I've got Nevada at 6, but I'm curious. Would you put them above Fresno State at 5? I think they've got the number 3 red zone offense in the country right now in terms of touchdown percent. Matt Lubick, one of the better stories in college football, basically 1 year removed from his first leukemia treatment, has completely revamped that offense, has Brendan Lewis playing the best football of his career. They're a great story. Nevada fans hate me, and I understand why, but I'm rooting for them in every game except CSU, and I think it's one of the really cool stories. But I think if we're talking about like trends and which way the teams are going, it feels like slowly but surely Nevada's ascending, and Fresno feels like they peaked and are on the way back down.
Yeah, it's a power ranking, right? So it's really momentum and like the current, where do they fall? So yeah, I guess
I think it's close.
I think I could make a better argument for Nevada being the higher ranked team in your power rankings than Fresno, which is insane because when I first looked at it, when you first posed the question, I was like, well, I just believe in Fresno's talent so much more.
And that's why
you're right. I mean, especially coming off of last week, how can you not?
They're tough as hell, man. They've bought into Choate's identity. They run the football. Defensively, they're sound. If you want to flip a program quickly, if you want to have success, it starts on defense. And I think you see that with UNLV and Nevada. I think that's really solid examples.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It just allows you to hang around. It allows you to be competitive. You might not win every game. You're going to have to build some things offensively, but it just allows you to hang around in a way that you don't see with teams that can't stop the run. Fresno State at 5, they're 3-3. They've lost 2 straight.
Yeah.
I know they hung against Michigan in the Big House, which I'm never going to take that away, regardless of whether Michigan looks wildly average.
Yeah. And I mean, they were right there with Wazoo until that pick 6.
I arguably should have won that game, but that's why I've got them at 6 or at 5, just below San Jose State. I think if they pull that out, you argue they should probably be 4. This one I went back and forth on because I think San Jose State's resume to this point, pretty impressive. But they haven't beat anybody that's like stellar. And I put them below CSU because they lost head-to-head and frankly got kind of thoroughly controlled here. So I put San Jose State at 4. I put CSU at 3, which is the highest we've had them at the power ranking since the beginning of the year.
Gosh, probably in the history of these power rankings.
On the football side, yeah.
On the football side for sure.
I don't know. They've definitely never been top 2.
I think I should think so. Man, this is an interesting stretch. San Jose State. What's going on with those quarterbacks, man?
I don't understand the decision to go 2 QB at all.
I thought they were locked in on Emmett Brown.
So did I. He was leading the league in touchdown passes. There's getting the ball to Nick Nash, and then all of a sudden these last 2 weeks, they're like, yeah, we're throwing Egan in there as well. I thought it killed the rhythm of their offense. I thought it was a really poor decision.
I mean, it rarely works.
They got outcoached in that game.
Yeah, no, and again, that fumble, if it's not for the scoop and score fumble,
a blowout. They win that game 21+.
Just so easy.
And that's that. Obviously, it's easy to feel good right now because they did pull it out. But that is the little thing, like the type of thing they've got to figure out how to eliminate is can you stop shooting yourself in the foot
100%
when you have chances to step on teams' throats?
Well, and I look at these records in your power rankings. Rams are 3-3, and boy, that game in Corvallis will burn for a smidge. It'll burn for a smidge. Now, overall, I think that is undoubtedly a positive performance. Some really good momentum was gathered, and it just like it set you up heading in the right direction, entering conference play, and that's really what matters. But boy, if they were 4-2 with that kind of a scalp, for lack of a better term,
You're talking yourself into like, why can't they be a 10-win team at that, or a 9-win team at that point?
Correct.
And that's still technically on the table here. Like if you ran the table, it's outside chance. I don't anticipate it, but you have even without Tory Horton, you have more star power than the vast majority of the teams you're going to play, if not all of them, to close the season. You've definitely got more experience and continuity between the amount of playmakers that you have from the last couple of years, the Blackburns, the Howells of the world, the Avery Morrows, guys that are not just people you've seen flash over a 3 or 4 game stretch, guys you've depended on now for years.
And the O-line, damn it. But now would be a great time to answer the question on Newer.
Yeah, Taylor wants to know, J-Mike, is Newer going to redshirt in your opinion? Think he's only played in 1 game so far, can't seem to get healthy. I think it's certainly on the table.
Do you have anything you can
I think
tell
it could
us
be.
on air?
He just keeps re-aggravating. He's got issues. It's kind of like he's got some like tendon issues in his foot, and it's just one of those like 1 week it feels pretty good, and then you go a little too hard in practice, and then all of a sudden he's not good. I think redshirting is certainly on the table, and that might be what's best for Newer's future, but some of that depends on how long he wants to stay in college. If you're CSU, frankly, you got a staff who's, feels like we're going in the right direction, but obviously we've talked about the pressure that's at stake this season. I think you're probably coaching to try and win. That's a tough one because I think you get into of like what's better for Newer versus what's better for CSU as a team are probably 2 different things. You've already seen Tory go down and trying to gut it out and frankly probably made things worse. Shouldn't have been on the field in that second half.
Yeah.
That's a really tough call, and I think I would support whatever Newer likes to do in that instance. But God, they could use him back because you don't have the consistent pressure when he's not out there.
Mm-hmm. No, he makes such a difference. That front just is a smidge limited without him.
Oh, and it makes if you have some guys that are popping in pass rush situations like Kershke and McDowell starting to get back into the mix a little bit. But it's a lot easier when, the other team's number 1 tackle's going against Newer and you're playing that number 2. It's a lot like the argument with the receivers. It's just the spacing changes. The matchups change when he's out there.
Yeah, certainly.
And the pressure that you put into an opposing team, the fear that they have changes as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Before we get out of here, top 2 teams in our my power rankings. I've got Boise at 1, UNLV at 2. mostly based on the fact that I think Boise's loss against Oregon is a better loss on the road than losing at home to Syracuse. I still think, though, if you put a knife to my back, I think UNLV is the more complete team.
Oh, they are. They are the more complete team. I don't think you're going to find a ton of arguments on that. It's one thing to be the more complete team. It's one thing to have the alien of the conference.
Gianti, right now, if you look at his rushing pace, has more yards on less carries than Barry Sanders did in his NCAA record-breaking season. What he is doing is not just impressive, it's an anomaly historically. He's doing something that no running back in this league has ever done.
Yeah. Do you know how easy it is to call plays for that team?
Yeah, just give the fucking ball to Gianti.
A child could do it. I mean, it's nuts.
He has a 50-yard rushing touchdown every week. Every single week.
No, it's nuts.
You probably wouldn't even do that on a video game.
It's nuts. And then on top of that, they have the usual advantage that Boise has most years in the conference in the trenches.
That O-line looks really solid. Defensively, I have some questions about the secondary. They have some lapses in pass coverage.
Yeah.
But they've got good size.
Uh-huh.
They get after the QB. Mm-hmm. And there's an inevitability to them.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can talk more complete all we want, but I think we both agree, like, head-to-head matchup, you like the Broncos.
It is, well, fortunately, I think it's next week they play.
Yeah, and that's
in Vegas,
big
so
one.
UNLV has home field advantage.
And it's like an early week game, too, right?
Yeah, it's a Friday night game, or maybe even Thursday. I think it's Friday.
Got to lock in on that one.
Yeah, I'm excited. It won't interfere with the CSU game. We'll have an opportunity to really lock in, and I think that's going to be a big game nationally because obviously there's some college football playoff implication there.
Yeah, for sure. And that Oregon loss looks so good right now.
It looks great. Now that UNLV has lost to Syracuse, I do wonder if this is no longer possible. But they still do have 2 true P4 victories on the road against Big 12 teams. Is there a world in which if UNLV wins this regular season game, but Boise wins the Mountain West Championship, could you get 2 Mountain West teams in? Could you have one be one of the top 5 highest ranked conference champions and also get potentially an at-large bid?
I think you would need 2 one-loss teams to manage it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible at this point because I think the path to that happening would have been UNLV beating Syracuse, UNLV then beating Boise in the regular season in the regular season game, but Boise makes the title game, wins the title, beats an undefeated UNLV team. Then I think you could have talked yourself into it. But yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I think you only get it if UNLV only has the 1 loss. Boise, I think, could be in the mix with 2 losses if those 2 losses are UNLV and Oregon on the road in like very competitive. But I just don't. You lose the you would win the conference in that scenario? No, and I just can't find
I think the Syracuse loss makes it impossible because there could have been a world in which you had a 1-loss Boise State team playing an undefeated UNLV for the Mountain West title game. Then Boise beats UNLV, which they each would have a win over each other. They each would have 1 loss. They each would have Power 4 wins on the road. Mm-hmm. You could talk yourself into it.
It's not crazy because Big Ten and SEC are already beginning to cannibalize each other.
I just think that a 3-loss SEC team's getting in over a 2-loss UNLV or Boise.
Exactly. You needed both to have 1 loss for this to actually be
I guess
an
you would
argument.
need chaos. Like if you had some 07 type chaos where all of a sudden like everybody in the SEC has like 3-4 losses, like a situation where Georgia loses multiple games, Bama loses multiple games. But even then, they're still probably going to get the benefit of the doubt.
The top 12, you're just going to have enough at-larges with just 2 losses to where it becomes slightly irrelevant.
Yeah.
But would they have an argument against like a 2-loss ACC at-large? For sure.
Especially with multiple Power 4 wins on the road. Like not great wins. I understand that.
I don't think they'll get like little brother treatment. I think it'll just be programs who've played really good football with 2 and 3 losses that get in ahead.
Well, and there's just there's so many
Would be
big
fun.
interconference matchups now with playoff implication that, like, frankly, some of these big teams, they're going to get a couple of chances, you know, to like earn a signature win.
Yeah.
You've just got more leeway, which is how it's always going to be. Before we get out of here, Taylor wants to know midseason record prediction. He's got 7-5, 5-2 in the Mountain West, and a Hawaii Bowl bid. What are you going? Hawaii Bowl would suck. Christmas Eve, fans don't get to go.
I mean, my head says 8-4. My gut says 9-3.
Run the table.
Just think they're better than anyone they play.
I'm going to say 8-4, and
If Tory wasn't injured, I'd be more bullish about
Same.
it for sure.
I'm going to say they go 8-4, though. I'm going to say they avoid the slip-ups. You got to beat both rivals, obviously, in that instance, and you got to steal one on the road, at least one on the road, between Fresno and Nevada, on top of winning this road game against Air Force.
If the Rams ran the table, they would get into the championship game over.
Yeah, because they would be undefeated. They don't play UNLV or boy. That's the benefit.
And then you just got to hope San Diego State gets a loss.
Yeah, and at that point, I guess if you
Could
if
you
they
imagine San Diego State?
well they have to play
CSU
UNLV,
face
so that's
off?
not going to happen. But
Well, if it did, though, all
That'd
of
be
a sudden we've
hilarious,
got
though.
a real case for it. That'd be amazing.
I'll be talking more about this matchup tomorrow. I'll also be talking basketball on an audio-only podcast. Don't miss out. I'm going to give out my projected order of finish. I'll give out my preseason all-conference picks. Rammies picked 7th in the league. Not a lot of love for a team that lost a lot of pieces. I think they'll be better than that, though. I'll be going live Saturday night, post-game, probably sometime around 9:30 or 10 p.m. We'll kind of see. Depends on when that game ends. Shout out to all of you in the Toyota chat. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up on YouTube, a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening, all that fun stuff. Always proud to be. Much love, y'all. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.